So when I say basic Selenium setup, what I'm assuming is that you are capable of creating a Maven project, and you are capable of adding a dependency here, that is Selenium dependency, which is this, and you are able to invoke the browser. That means when you write this script and when you invoke the browser, you are able to see browser being invoked and navigated. So here it's invoked, then navigated, and of course few operations here in between. And then you're able to fetch the title, and then you are able to put some kind of validations here, which can also be called as checkpoints, right? And then you are quitting the driver. So I am assuming that you are able to do it for Chrome and Firefox, at least these two browsers. Now, I have also seen some issues people raised on WhatsApp, that they are not able to set their first Maven project. They're getting some issues in the Maven and here and there. So there is a specific way of setting things up, like how to set up a Maven project, or how to set up Maven in your own system and Selenium in your own system, as well as Eclipse and JDK. There's a defined way. When you do it in that format, it will be, you'll be able to successfully install it. But sometimes it could so happen that it is not really, you are not able to install the software seamlessly, and sometimes you're not able to create a Maven project seamlessly and it would work. It could throw certain errors based on various different conditions, and we cannot possibly solve those issues on all of your systems, because it's not really a Maven issue. It sometimes sometimes is because of your own system configurations. Sometimes you have done something in your system previously, because of which something is clashing with that specific Maven or Eclipse setup, and a lot, there is a like zillion ways things could go wrong basically. So what we do is, we have a solution for that. Is we will give you a virtual machine, basically a image, and once you start that image using VirtualBox, which is like this, you will power it up. So what will happen is that there will be an additional system which will work on top of your own laptop, on top of the laptop which you own, and you're going to work on that image. So on that image, everything will be in a working condition. So it will be Maven, Git, everything will be already installed, and you can start working on that machine. So that way you will not kind of stuck with your own system and you're not able to proceed, because solving the issues of your system could take time, and I don't want you guys to get stuck. If you could solve it in your own system, you can make use of your own system, nothing any better than that. But somehow if you're not able to do that, then this is the answer. I'm going to send a link to you for this, maybe by tomorrow. Maybe Sarang will send it by tomorrow, end of the day perhaps. And then you have to download that. And of course, all the instructions on how to set this up will be there as a part of a document. You can just follow that. It's that simple. And once that happens, you have to again click on Start here, open the Software VirtualBox Manager, click here, and there will be a Windows 7 machine opened for you. And everything from Maven, Eclipse, everything, even Jenkins will be installed there. Automatically will be there available for you to use. And then there will not be any issues you will face there, unless you of course screw things up there. But mostly there will not be you will not face any issues of setup issues at least. All right, so that is that. I'll update on that by tomorrow end of the day. You will get something to download from, there will be a link, you will download it and then you'll set it up. All right, so I'll just move on to the today's agenda. So today I'm going to talk about Selenium side of things. So I think I made this clear in the last I think last Sunday that we are going to start with Selenium, and whatever Java aspects are left, I'm going to cover those in between, taking different sessions, and also those will also be covered as a part of these sessions. For example, I'm doing some Selenium, I'm telling you some Selenium concept, but in between, because Selenium cannot work without Java, right? So while explaining some Selenium concepts on the fly, I would also introduce a specific Java concept. So from now onwards, things will be more mixed up. They will not be, I will not be teaching you things in isolation that this is Java, this is Selenium. So previously we did that because we need to set up a foundation fundamentals, but now things will be on a more mixed perspective because we need to understand the right context, right? Learning about array list and learning about hash map in isolation to Selenium will not make much sense to you. However, for collections, I have to take a separate session that we will do anyway. There are few specific sessions for Java which require a specific session, a standalone session that I will do. But lot of different concepts, small concepts of Java, small but important concepts in Java, you will have to learn it while doing these automation scripts. Okay, so start paying attention. Now coming back to our original or today's agenda. So that is our locators basically. So what are locators? Before I jump onto that, you guys have to understand the true aspect of a web page, because Selenium is nothing but to automate a web page, right? And when I say automate, it has a way to interact with the elements present inside the web page, right? So the thing is, when you see a page, for example, you see any page, I'll open maybe Amazon.in or maybe very simple. Let's talk about Google itself, google.com, because that's simple enough. Google.com. When you see this page is built over HTML. What you see is a user interface, which is not really, I should say, quote unquote truth, right? This is not what really is used to implement. The server is not sending you a user image or a user interfaces. It's sending you an HTML. So when you say google.com, there's a server there somewhere kept. Server will be having an IP address, and this is google.com is a DNS server, and it will be mapped. So when you say google.com in your browser, there will be a request sent through the server, and from there server is responding to you, and it is sending you HTTP packets, and inside that HTTP packet you have a segment called as body. So every HTTP packet has two segments. One is header, second is body. Now in the header section, the other lot of different kind of informations are saved, like statuses and content type and all those things. But in the body, you will see something called as HTML. Okay. Now in the body could hold anything, by the way. Body could hold a text, it could hold XML, it could hold JSON. But in the case of web page, it holds HTML. So what happens when you do google.com and you click enter, there's a request went to the server, and the server sends you an HTTP packet, not one HTTP packet, maybe a collection of HTTP packets. And those HTTP packets are received by your browser, which acts as your client. So here browser is your client, and it receives those HTTP packets. And inside those HTTP packets, it checks what is the content. So the content which it finds is HTML. So the HTML is being sent by the server to the client, which is your browser. And the browser's job is to render that HTML. By rendering, I mean to display in a more user-friendly way. So user-friendly way or mechanism here is what you see right now. So when you see Google, it's very colorful Google representation, and there's a text box, there's a button, and there's some links here, some links here. It is Chrome or your browser's tendency to convert that HTML markup language or HTML text to this specific view, right? So when we talk about Selenium, so Selenium has nothing to do with what you are right now seeing here. Selenium interacts with the HTML because a code can interact with the code, right? That's how it is. Selenium is a code, it's a library. It is capable of talking to HTML directly. It doesn't talk to the user interface. So indirectly, when you talk to HTML, the effect or the thing which you do into the HTML actually gets cascaded to the user interface, which you see here, right? So for example, this is your text box, right? So when I go and do a right click, I do a inspect, right? When I do a inspect, what I see here, right? I see HTML code, right? And HTML has a specific structure. So I'm assuming that you guys have some idea about how HTML works. I'll give some briefings about it, but I still recommend you guys to go through a specific tutorial on maybe W3 schools. It will hardly take you 10 to 30 minutes to go through it. W3 schools HTML, right? Just go through it, maybe till here. Not, if not all, maybe till JavaScript till this segment, this area. Go through it just one after another and see what they are telling you. It's very simple to understand what's happening. I'm not expecting you to be mastering HTML. You're not going to be a web developer or front-end web developer, but you need to understand what HTML looks like and what these tags mean, really what they mean. That much you should know, and I would recommend you guys to go through it once before. Otherwise, it's become more difficult for you to understand how Selenium is working, because Selenium talks to HTML, and you need to instruct Selenium to talk to HTML. But if you yourself doesn't understand HTML in great detail, how you will instruct Selenium to talk to HTML, right? So you need to understand the whole overall structure of it, and I will give you some understanding of it. So first is the parent. So by the way, this is structured in a tree manner, right? So you see tree structure, you see it everywhere, in the sense you see it in your folder structure. So you have a C drive, that's the parent node. Then inside that you have multiple folders, that is your child. The way inheritance works, guys, right? So you have a parent, then you have a child, then you have a, when you go inside that folder, you see other folders as well. Those are again child of the folder in which you just went, right? So that is actually, if you understand or map it in a logical structuring, it is nothing but a tree structure, right? You have a node, and then you have a child, something like, if I'd like to draw it, freehand, something like this. You have this parent node, then you have this node, then you have one more node, let's say, then you have one more node here, like this. That's how your folder structure goes, isn't it? That this is C drive, this is then subsequent folders, and one level down. So these are actually, if you're from computer background, you must be knowing about tree structure and their depths. So these are depths. This is the root, this is the level 1, this is level 2, this is level 3. So these are the depths of a folder structure, right? This is at 0 level, this is as first level, this is at second level, something like this, right? You can understand this HTML document organized in somewhat similar manner. So there's a tree structure associated with it. So if you see the parent is here is HTML tag. So if I explain you more about, if I explain you about here, so if you see a single statement here, right? When you see this, it is organized in a specific structure. So when you say body here actually is a tag. You say it's an HTML tag. Then you see something written after body, after this tag. So this tag is enclosed between two brackets. So this one is this bracket, second is this bracket, right? There are two brackets inside which this tag is enclosed. Then you have body, this is a tag name, and this combination is called as attribute and attribute value. This is a key value pair. You can understand it as a key value pair. So this is your attribute name, this is your attribute value, right? Or you can also understand it as an object, perhaps. So object name is body, and object attribute is JS model, and its value is this. Okay, maybe if you see how a class is structured, right? So you have a class name, inside this you have attributes, and then you have a methods, right? You can also visualize this in a class or object perspective. So this is your name of the object, body, and then this is your attribute, right? This is its attribute value. Okay, so I've given you 2-3 ways to visualize this, but essentially it's very, very simple. This is your div, again a tag name. This is a class, this is an attribute, and this is its attribute value. This is its ID, again another attribute, and its value. Understand this as, let's say, the way we understood class, right? Class in itself is an entity, and the class has attributes, right? Attributes define what that class is. So if I want to identify what this div is, right, I need to identify this element based on this its attribute value. So class is an attribute, and this is its attribute value. So if I want to identify in all of this document where this div is, I would say I want to get a div, an element whose tag name is div, and whose class is CTRP, and whose ID is viewport, right? Now to elaborate more on it, the whole document which you see here, whatever, whether you see it here or you see it in HTML, it is divided into certain elements. You can say these are elements. The elements are interlinked with each other. One element can be child of another element. One can be parent of another element. For example, this div here. If you notice this div, which I have right now highlighted, this is a sibling of div. That means they are at the same level, right? And this div is a child of this div, right? This div class CTRP is child of this div, right? And if you see, the moment I am hovering on it, something is happening on the UI as well, because that's how the Chrome is telling me that this div is responsible for this section of the UI. This div is responsible for this area of the UI. If I go further deeper, let's say if I go here, now it's telling me this div, which is div, tag name is div, but JS attribute is JS model, and value is this, JS data in this. This deals with this specific area. And if I want to see what this text box really look like in the HTML, I would go here. So this is what it's telling me. Okay, this is telling me that this input, this text box tag name is input, and it has so many attributes. So class, max length, name, type, these are its attributes and their corresponding values. All right, guys. And there is an example. For example, there is an attribute called as value, but it doesn't has any specific value assigned to this attribute. The attribute name in itself is a value, right? But there's no value assigned to it. For example, if I go and give it a value, so that means I can modify the value of any HTML and it will be reflected here. You see this? I just added a value here. I said, and it will reflect it here. So this is how HTML affects the UI. UI in itself is a false notion. Okay, this is just for how you see it. What's happening is this. So this is where all the game is. Nothing is happening here. Everything happening here. You change the HTML and things get reflected on the UI. And this is what Selenium does, guys. This is what Selenium does. Selenium interacts with the HTML directly, right? It interacts with the HTML. And the moment it does something to the HTML, it gets reflected on the UI. Okay. So just to summarize, this whole HTML page can be represented in a tree-like structure. That's the first takeaway from what I just explained. Then any tree-like structure has nodes. You can understand those nodes as elements, and that elements can have a parent, or it can also have a child, or it will also have a sibling, right? The same way this is organized. So if I maybe to elaborate further, if I draw this, right? If I draw this here, I will say this is the parent, this is my HTML. Inside this, I have two nodes. One is head and one is body. You see, one is HTML here, this is parent, this is head, and this is body, and they both are at the same level. This is level 1. All right. Then inside body, I have multiple tags. So I can say style, and div. So I'll say one is style, second is also style, and then third is div. This is my div. Then inside div, I have also 3, right? That is what I could see right now. So one S, then we have D, and then we have D again, right? So I have this much excuse me, I have this much tags here. This is how I would represent my tree structure, right? And there is a two-way I could reach here, right? Now you could ask, why would you want to reach to a specific element? See, so my original statement was that Selenium interacts at runtime with the HTML to do certain operations. Now imagine a situation that we want Selenium to interact with a specific element. Let's say I want to click on this button, right? Let's say I want to click on this specific button. So then I would need to tell Selenium that you have to click on this button. Then Selenium would ask me, okay, tell me its address, or give me some clue so that I could find it and perform the operation. So I need to tell Selenium specifically that where this particular element is present or located, in the HTML document. So I need to tell, and first of all, I need to find this on my own where this is located, and then I will go and tell Selenium that this is where it's located. But the problem is, how would I find it myself, right? And that is a skill set which we need to learn. That is, you need to understand how HTML is organized and how you can find a specific element in the HTML, right? So for example, in this case, let's say this will be there somewhere in the HTML, because if it's not in the HTML, it will not show up here. So this element has to be implemented somewhere in the HTML, and it will also have two things. It will surely have two things. First, it will have some attributes, right? It will have tag, right? It will have a tag, it will have attributes. So based on this attribute and its tag, I can find it, right? Second way is I could find its location, right? Location means I will say where for example, location, what is the location of this element? I will say this is present inside HTML, then inside body, then inside div, and then this is where it is. So what is the address of this? I will say address of this is HTML, then body, then div, and then another div, right? So this is the address. Okay. And this is another way of finding it. So there are basically, in Selenium, you have two ways. One is using this mechanism or using this mechanism, right? Something like if you want to reach me, right? So you have two ways. Either you will say, you will type something in the address and you will see a path, right? Something in the Google Maps, which you see a path, right? When you see and you see enter something, there is a path, specific path which Google Maps shows you, right? That path will lead you to me. This is that method, and this method is also called as Xpath, right? As the name suggests here, Xpath, right? So this is a pathway. You can follow this path to reach a specific element. And second way is using its attributes and its values pair. Attributes, combination of attribute and its tags. Okay. Now I will clear my drawings. I will go here. Now let's say because example which I gave was I want to identify this object, right? Now if you notice, this is the object, this is this object. This has a tag as svg. This is the tag. All right. This is the attribute. Attribute is class and value is this. This is also an attribute, and this is also an attribute, and this is also an attribute. And if I open this is its text basically. So inside this we have few more tags present inside. So I can also make use of this. But I would say, okay, this is what represents this object. I want to find this. So I could find it in two ways. One is I would say from top, I would say I need to go with the path format. So I'll say, okay, this is HTML. Then inside this we have body. Then inside body go to div. Then inside that go to another div. Then go to another div and div. Lot of divs inside. Okay, lot of divs, and eventually you will reach a div and then you will go to SVG. This is called as XPath way, or rather in more proper way, it's the absolute XPath mechanism, right? That is, you are trying to locate the element, which is this, using its path. Okay. Now the second way is using its tag and attribute values. Okay. So what is the tag here? Tag is SVG. And what is the values here? Value is class HPV VWB. So today specifically we are trying to learn how to find the element based on its tags or its attributes and its text. This is our today's purpose. I tried to explain all of this because otherwise you might not get enough understanding on what really we are doing when we are writing driver.findElement by.id or by.className or by.link text, something like that, right? So this is about what I was telling you this. And now XPath is a topic which deserves a separate session. So I will not be talking more about XPath today. Maybe in the coming weeks we will talk more on Xpath, because that's something it's a separate skill in altogether. Finding right XPaths is a skill set which you need to develop. It doesn't come automatically, but just for demonstration purposes. So if I want to establish its path, in XPath also there are two ways. One is absolute, second is relative. I'm going to use a relative XPath to tell you how can I locate this element. So I can say /, and then I will say svg, then I will say @, then I will say what is the attribute name, class. I'll say class is equal to, and this is the value. So I will say, I'll just use this value here. Okay, now it should be able to identify it. Somehow it's not. Okay, then I will also, let's say if I add a focusable or viewable perhaps, or let me try to find this one first. It's parent. You will not have to do this today. This I am just telling for the demonstration purpose and nothing else. You don't have to do this at all for today's session. This is part of when you're going to learn the the XPaths. Okay, so for example, if you see, I have just added this and it is able to find it. This is how you test the XPath basically. If I say svg, somehow it's not working. Let's see. Let me check it later. Okay, so this is the general idea basically, and this is the general idea that you have to identify based on two ways. Either you can make use of XPath or you can make use of attribute and tag pair. What you see here is nothing but an XPath. An XPath itself make use of attributes and tag names, but in a specific format, right? Now, without further confusing you, I might have confused you with this last step. So don't get confused. This is not what you have to do at least for 2-3 days, until and unless you have good understanding of how XPath works. That's for later classes. Today we are going to talk more about this learning how to identify the elements based on the attributes and its values. So if I come here, this is my first class. I hope so far you understand what is WebDriver equal to new Chrome driver. If you remember that yesterday also there was a question about this, which one is the interface available in Selenium. This is the interface. Using this interface, you can assign any kind of driver to this, right? This is also, you can say in some sense polymorphism is an example of polymorphism, because this driver, if you notice, can take either new Chrome driver, or it can also be initialized with new Firefox driver or Opera driver, or any different drivers which you might encounter, or on which you want to perform the operations, right? Why? Because all of this Chrome driver, Mozilla driver actually implements this interface. This is the inheritance concept I was talking about when we were discussing inheritance in Java sessions, right? That if the class, which is Chrome driver, is a child class of a class, which is interface in this case, then I can assign the instance of that class to its parent class, right? So interface here is implemented by Chrome driver, and that's the reason driver, which is of type WebDriver, is able to store object of Chrome driver, because this is a parent of Chrome driver class. All right. Now second is the statements, driver.manage.window maximize. This is so once you run this, it will just trigger the Chrome for you. Then you can perform some more operations, and this driver here actually controls that instance which will just get opened. So at runtime, if you want to do anything with that driver, with that Chrome browser, this is the object which you would go to, driver object. Then driver.manage.window.maximize, used for maximizing. Delete cookies. If you want to delete the cookies already present, sometimes you have to do that, because if you open the browser and the cookies are saved, sometimes it saves some session variables or some information which might affect the test cases when you actually execute, which it would store some cookies which you don't want it to store. So it's used for that. This is like basic things which you should be writing. If you skip it, it might not affect you in much sense. If if your browser or your application is not accepting any cookies or doesn't depend on cookies, so it will have no impact. But maximizing is a good thing to do. And there's one more statement called as implicitly weight, right? So in Selenium, we have different types of weights available. Rather, it's actually two types. One is implicit and second is explicit. And Fluent is a kind of subset of explicit in itself. It's not a third type. Sometimes people confuse it as a third type. It's a type of explicit. Now, the way implicit works here is that you want your driver object to wait for a certain period of time before you throw an exception saying the element is not found, right? So the idea is when you navigate, when you run this statement, it will do it very quickly, right? It will just navigate and then it will try to execute this statement. And what if in the application, when you navigate, doesn't automatically quickly navigate, right? It takes some time for navigation, isn't it? So that time tolerance you have to provide based on this. What is time tolerance? Something your Java is assume that Java is very smart. Your application, which is this, is not very smart. It is slow. So you are somehow instructing your Java code and you are saying, dude, wait for a certain period of time, because wait for this element, this page to load properly. Wait for a certain period of time, that is, I mentioned 30 seconds, before you say it's not working, right? So once you add this statement, you are kind of instructing the Selenium that don't worry and wait till 30 seconds before you say that application is not loaded or element is not present, right? Now, if I go through this statement, so I think till this point you knew already, you have tried this in your browser basics. Here you must have tried this till get. Now this statement is what is actually our today's agenda, which is to find an element. So remember, there are two ways I told you about. There are two ways to find an element. One is using Xpath, which I was telling here, and second was using attributes and its values, right? So the method here, because this driver is nothing but an object, right? And this object has methods, and one of this method is find element, and this method is responsible for finding the specific element, but based on some criteria. You remember I was also talking about that I need to somehow intimate the Selenium that where that element is present, because I'm saying do something on this element. So that do something is the next part, but where is that element? I need to tell Selenium explicitly and very specifically where that element is located in the page. And this is how I do it. I say, driver, please find an element which has a ID as email. All right. So let's say we are using this example. So where that element is, let me go here. Right. So basically, after navigation is done, I'm saying, Mr. Selenium, please enter something here. Right. What to enter, right? That is for later. But before I invoke those enter component or enter method, I need to tell Selenium where is this element present in the HTML, because HTML is not something like our brain, right? Sorry, Selenium is not like our brain. Our brain can visualize and understand what it is. You can quickly figure out where is the text box, but that's not how Selenium works. Selenium need to know exactly where it is, and this is my way of telling Selenium. All right, this is my way of telling Selenium. This is my way of telling Selenium that we need to find an element whose ID, guys, give me a minute. This is my way of telling Selenium that, the ID, find this element based on its attribute, which is the value as ID. Sorry, the attribute name is ID, but the value is email. So this element which you see here, this element input, has multiple attributes. One is ID, second is type, third is placeholder, then ng model, then autofocus. You see, I can choose which attribute I would use to do my job, but Selenium provides you multiple ways of doing it. So there are 5 or 6 ways of doing it. So if I say by dot, I can identify based on class name, Css selector, ID. If it is a link, then based on link text, then name. If it is a link, then based on partial segment of the link text, and then tag name. And at last we have Xpath. So there are how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ways of identifying a locator or an element. right? Or an object. You have different names. You can, point to the components of HTML. So usually when you deal with Selenium, you say web elements, because everything what you see here, Selenium understands it as a web element. Everything is a web element for it. All tag, each and single segment, everything is an element for Selenium, right? Also called as web element. This is a web element. If you say, so this web element holds another web element called as this input element. And if I want to only identify this one, I will say, okay, find an element whose by.id, whose ID is email. Okay, so this is the ID. This is the mechanism by which you can identify element using its ID. If it has ID, that means you can able to identify it. If it doesn't have ID, then maybe you have to make use of some other ways of identifying it. But luckily in this case, we have an ID already available. So this is where your judgment comes into picture. You cannot possibly use ID. You can't say, okay, what's the problem? I will always use ID, because that's now not your decision. When developer develops the application, it's up to his own opinion, and also depends on the framework which he is using. Based on all of that, he decides what attributes to put and how to put those attributes. In the sense, right now, email, you have this email written here, right? Now it's up to the developer to always keep this ID as email or to generate it at runtime. So sometimes you have ID, but its value is not unique. Every time you load the application, every time the value is changing. That means you cannot use ID, because you have to tell Selenium specifically that every time you have to be sure that every time, no matter at what point of time you open the application again or you run the script again, every time the ID has to remain email. So if I just refresh it, and if I go and check the ID again, the ID still remains email, right? This is my cue or hint to know that I could make use of ID here, right? But it's not the case everywhere. In all the circumstances, you will always get an ID. It's not true. For example, if I say google.com, to the previous example. All right. So here, if you see here, do you see an ID anywhere? I don't see it. So we have class, max length, you have name, type, J section, but there's no ID. So that means you cannot use ID here. You might use name here. So you will say by dot name, and then you'll give the name as, what is the name here? Q, right? You'll copy this and you will paste it here in the quotes. That is your way of identifying. That will be my way of identifying this element. So base Selenium will come, okay, we'll say driver means find a element inside Chrome with the name as Q, This is what this statement means basically. All right. I'll go revert this, because this example is not about this application, it's about this application. All right, guys. So this is how basically this is structured, and it is not a very, very complex thing to understand. It's very simple. If you have ID, use ID. If you have name, use name, right? If it doesn't have ID and name, then you have to make use of some other locator like CSS selectors or link text if it is a link. And if nothing works, then you have to resort to Xpaths, right? Because Xpaths are the only last option available to you to identify element. If it doesn't have anything, ID, name, and even if it has ID and name, but they are not unique, that means you cannot use it. I just told you that if it's not unique, you cannot use it. If it is not unique, then you cannot use it. Then you have to resort to Xpaths. So Xpaths provides you a lot of good mechanisms and ways to identify an element uniquely. And that is why Xpath is the most important concept in Selenium. If you go to a Selenium interview, they will ask you about writing Xpaths. And the various ways we have, various methods available inside Xpath, which you could make use of to identify the elements. Okay, and that we will cover in the Xpath sessions later. But for now, you have to learn only this much, wherein you can, so that you can interact with the page and you can enter their values and all. Okay, so I'll go back. So this is the example. Here I'm doing username. I'm saying driver.findElement by.id, and this returns an object called as web element, because as I said, find element means find the element, but it will also try to store it somewhere, right? That somewhere is a web element object, because Selenium understands HTML in the terms of web elements. Everything which you see here is a web element for Selenium. And when you say find element, that means you're returning a web element, and it will get stored inside an object called as web element, and this is the variable name. Now the part comes where you want to do something with it. Now you have located. This is your located. You have done the located part, located the element successfully. This means you want to do something with it, right? You want to do something with it. Now this do something with it means you have to trigger some method. So usually what do you do with any kind of elements in the page? Either it's a text box, you write something, or it's a button or a link, or you click something. That's the most of the things which you usually do when you are on a page, right? If you go and buy Amazon, go to Amazon.com application, right? Amazon.in application. What do you do there? You type something, that means you're sending some keys, or you click somewhere, or you select something in the list box, but there also you do some click operations, or you do one more specific thing. You don't click or do anything, you just move the mouse, right? You move the mouse and you just hover it somewhere. As soon as you move the mouse, a drop down appears, right? That's what you do. What else? You might be able to upload a file, or you might be dragging and dropping something, right? These are the many of the operations which you do in Selenium, and Selenium somehow supports all of them. But having said that, the web element class only supports two things. One is sending of the keys, and second is clicking something. So one is the sending keys. When you see a dot here, you see clear. Clear here means if there's something present in the web element or text box, it will clear it. Then click, right? So these are the two operations. 1, 2, and there's one more called as send keys, which is this one. So this web element object or class is capable of doing only these two things of many things. So do something can be click, send keys, select, right? Selecting from a drop down, or drag and drop, and what else? Hover, mouse over, double click, right? Or right click. So these are many things which you typically do in an application, isn't it? This element, what we are right now learning, is capable of actually only doing two things, or rather three things. One is clicking, second is send keys, and third is again which deals with the text box. It is clearing the content of the text box. It only can handle these three things. Those are actually are the two most important things which you do in a web page. And third is the select, because you do have a lot of lists which you want to select the item from, right? But this element doesn't support. This web element class doesn't support. For this, you have a separate class for it. So Selenium has divided this across various segments. So this is covered by web element class. This is covered by select class. All of this is covered by actions class, right? This actually comes under the interactions part. Right now, if I talk about this interactions with the web elements, right? So you have these many interactions which you have to do, right? So out of these, web element class which you have supports this much. Then select class supports selecting items from the list. And eventually there is an actions class which is capable of doing all of this and all the weird stuff which you usually do, right? Press control and click P, press control and do this. All of that can be covered in the action. So basically you have these three classes: web element, select, and actions class, which you would use to interact with any kind of elements present inside a web page. Since we are using web element for now, we are going to focus only on this, but coming days you're going to see select as well as actions. All right. So without digressing further on what we are doing, so this is the element is found, and this is you are saying send keys, and then inside that you have to send what exactly you have to send, what exactly you want to type, but that you will do within in the double quotes. So when you said something in the double quotes, that is exactly what it's going to get printed there. The very beginner who is very beginner with Java, they sometimes do this mistake, and they say, sir, error is coming, right? This is not a variable. This is a string which you want to send. This has to be present inside a string. And sometimes if you're not sure what to write, when you do here dot send keys, right, it gives you an kind of a clue here. It says send keys returns void, right? And you can see here that this takes a char sequence. So when you write a char sequence like this here, it takes those values and insert it, something like that. Okay, for example, if you say dot click, it doesn't take any value, does it? No, it doesn't take it. So that's how you know what to write and how to write it. It gives you the clues. Now next here is, I will say driver dot sorry, I'm getting a call, 1 minute. All right, so here you say driver dot find element, and then you say by dot id entering. So what I'm doing here, so when you say this, and then you have to click on the button as well, so that you can kind of do some operations or go to the next page. So again, the same way I have identified this element, I have to again identify this element. So here we say it also has an ID, and ID name is entrim. It is supposed to be entering, but it is entrim, enter img, and or it's rather I enter image, not entering, enter image. Then you will copy this. Always copy and paste. Don't try to type it down, otherwise you might make a typo mistake, and then you will spend hours knowing what happened wrong or where things went wrong. Always try to copy and paste these things. Don't try to type it. So I'll copy and I will paste it like this here. So here the same thing is happening. It's saying driver.find element by.id, and then proceed button dot click. So what will happen? It will click on this button, and then fetching the next page title using, I think this already I think Sarang covered in the last class. The driver, if you want to get anything out of a driver, you will use driver, and then you will use its corresponding subsequent methods available. What is the current URL? What is the page source? What is the title, window, handle, right? Everything is present here. And then there are multiple methods. Method chaining is present here. So one method gives you another clue to what to write here. Like in window, you have other methods, full screen, maximize, something like that, right? So here in the case, I'm only trying to say to return a title, right? So if I go here, it will return me the title of the page. What is the title of the page? Title of the page actually is what you see here at the top right now. Since there are so many browsers open here for me, it's very concise and squeezed, and you're not able to see. But the title which you see here actually comes from the head section of the HTML. That is the head, and then here you will see the title. See, Rajesh, this is the title. This is what is fetched. This is what is displayed here at the top, and this is what is displayed when you say driver.getTitle. So whatever is you write here, it will be getting saved here next page title, and this will be printed. And eventually, this is how you close the browser. Now, I've spoken from, I'm speaking since last, I think 45-50 minutes, and I haven't gave you any opportunity to ask a question. Do you guys have any questions so far, or it's crystal clear? Anyone? Okay, we do have some slides also. Maybe I'll walk you through the slide as well. But try to practice more basically. Where are the slides? Oh, this is a video, sorry. I think this is the slide. All right, anyway, meanwhile it loads. I'll go quickly jump onto the next example. It is not different than what I have just explained. It is exactly the same. It's just uh, instead of explaining you about IDs, how to find it ID, I am using here by name. So find element here, it's by name. This is an exactly the same example which I was showing earlier, like google.co.in. You have a search box there, name is Q. Then you have you have a button there. The name of button is button K. Maybe I will show you this one as well. So if I go to Google and I have to, let's say, after entering some text, I have to click on Google search. I will first go here, check it, and then I'll say, okay, the class is this, but the name is btnk, right? And that's what I will copy and I will paste it here. I'll say by.name and I'll place it here. Then I will click on it, and then here it's kind of waiting for 5 seconds, right? This is not a right way to do, but to begin with, it's all right, because you have to somehow wait, right? You have to sync your speed of the code with the speed of the application, because the moment you say I'm clicking on the button, the page will start loading, right? But your application, your robot or your code, your script have no instructions to wait, for example. So immediately after clicking, it will try to do something here, or it will try to quit it. But we don't want it. We want that after clicking, wait for some period, and then you say go to the next steps. If you don't write these steps, or rather this step, it will not wait, and it will try to do something, and it will just close the browser, and your task is not even completed, right? This comes under synchronization, which, as I said, deserves another session, and it's a little bit advanced session, so you need to understand basics first before you jump onto the synchronization aspects of it. All right, so enough said. This is about by name. Then this is about class name, basically. So if you want to identify based on a class name property of it, then you will use a sign in. Sorry, you will use the class name entity. So if you have class name, basically you using the name of the class, then you will use the class name attribute here. Then the link text. Now this you can only use in the case of links. If it is a link, only then you can use it. So for example, if I go to this element here, this page here, and come on, my net is running slow somehow today. I don't know why. All right. So here, if you see which link we have, ID locator in Selenium. So let's say it must be somewhere here. For example, this is what I need to find, right? So if I want to find this link, I need to first inspect it. And if you see, this link has attributes. This is href, this has target, and this has rel. But the problem is I cannot use by.id because there's no ID. I cannot use by.name because there is no name. I cannot use class name because there is no class name property as well here, isn't it? So I will be left with using one specific unique property of this link, which is its text. That means in all of this page, there is only one link. Link here is represented with A. If it is a tag or anchor tag, it will be called as a link. Only then you can use link text. You cannot use link text anywhere else if it is the tag name is not A. Only in case of tag name as A, only there you can use link text. And this is a text of it, right? So whatever you see here, so this is a tag, bracket open, bracket closed, right? And then again the closing segment of the tag. Whatever is written inside this is actually the text of the element. Now this can also be in the case of a div or p or any such element. So text usually is whatever is present inside this and this tag, right? And whatever is present inside this closing bracket is its attributes. This is its text. This is its closing bracket. as I said, you have to go through this W3 schools once. Once you go through it, you will clearly understand how the HTML is structured. I assume that you should go through it because I cannot possibly explain everything in a single session, and it's really simple to understand. If it doesn't understand, then you come back to me and I'll maybe take a session on it, but I would really assume it will be helpful for everyone if you go through it once. Now, to identify this link based on this text here, right, to identify this based on this text, I can just directly write this, something like this. But what if there could be some cases wherein only specific part of the text is constant and everything else is changing? Maybe in the case of this example here, right? I think it's in the same example, partial link text. I don't know where it's kept, somewhere. I don't know where it is, but the idea is, for example, I'll try to explain it based on the same example. So let's say I want to identify this link only based on this text. I'm not worried about what is appearing here. It could be anything. It could be random number, random alphanumeric string. It could be anything. Every time I refresh the page, anything could come here, but this will remain constant. If this is the case, for example, then I could use partial link text. I will place this value here. So what will happen? It will go and find a link, that is the tag name is A, and it will try to find the tag name as A and whose text contains in Selenium. Not exactly equal to, but it contains in Selenium, and it will be able to find it, return it here, and then perform the operation. All right. So that is how basically it's built. Then we have one more called a CSS Selector. Let me skip it for today, and Xpath as well, because it's for, we'll try to explain it in later class. I want you to practice this first, and then we'll talk about CSS Selector and Xpaths. Right? There are a few more called as form filling and all of this. They're no different than what I have just explained. You really don't have to worry too much about CSS Selector and Xpath for now. And whatever assignments I'm going to give it to you, you have to use IDs or names there, right? Now, the last part which I want to explain is the structure of the script which you have here. Okay. Now, if you see, notice this is what we are writing. It's a plain Selenium script, but it is not really doing much. Okay. It is only entering something and clicking on something. Rather, how we should be structuring it is in a test format. Right now, what is a test? This is what I want to explain you. And the next classes, I'm going to introduce JUnit as well. But today, let's keep it simple. So the idea here is simple. What do you automate, right? What do you automate? So you automate a manual test case. Or you can say I automate a flow. Or sometimes you say I'm automating a journey, right? Now, what is a manual test case? Manual test case consists of steps. I have examples of how manual test cases looks like. I'll share that with you. Okay. But typically it consists of steps. It has steps like open browser, login, or let's say if I don't want to log in, let's leave it like this. Let's say I'll talk about in this test case context, enter value or enter email in the text box, click on button, then expected. So this is your steps, this is your expected. What is expected? User should be able to navigate to the next page with title as register, right? Then there could be some more expectations. So this is the first expectation. What is second expectation? Second expectation could be user should be able to see some buttons or text, something like that. Something like I want to log into Gmail. What is the test case? Open the browser, navigate to Gmail, enter username, password, click on enter button. Then what is the expectation? I should be able to see my emails, right? That is my expectation. So this is your expectations. So normally when you, this is how your manual test case looks like, but you have to convert this into a automated script. So the same format you have to provide to the automation script, which is usually how it is structured is you do something, or you do many things, basically do something, do something, do something, and then you put a checkpoint, also called as validation point, or you can say assertion, right? So your test cases are always divided into do something and assert it. Assert means whatever you have done is delivering the right result, right? So if you notice in this example, I'm doing something, I'm doing all of these steps, right? Open browser, enter, click on button. So whatever you see from here, whatever you're seeing from here, come on, from here till here, whatever is coming under these two lines is nothing but your do something part. You did something, right? But then this part from here till here, this is supposed to be a validation part. Right now it's not validating anything. It's not validating anything, but you need to write your validations under this segment, under this. Right now it's just fetching the register and it's just doing something, right? So if you keep writing your test case under main methods, you will not be able to achieve this more efficiently. Somewhere here it's done like this. For example, I think I saw an example here somewhere, I think here in this case, right? This is an example of a validation, right? So here it's saying if page title register, then print this as print this. But this also is not, is a right validation. I mean, you are trying to check something, but you are just printing the result. When you run this, the Java will say I have ran it successfully. It will not say whether test case is pass or whether test case is fail. And we want our code to say that I am a pass or I am a fail. That is the whole and sole purpose of having an automation test. The automation test tells you that I did this, and when I did this, this was a result and it's a success result. Or when I did this, I did not expect it, or I did not get the desired result and I am failing the test case. So this test case is a fail. So a test case can only have two results after execution. Either it's a fail or it's a pass. All right. So pass can have, it's only one possibility because of which it's a pass, it's a positive flow, but it could fail for many reasons. It could fail because of defects in the system, or a defect in the own script, or maybe the slowness of the application, or maybe the data issue, but it's nonetheless will be called as a fail. So essentially there can only be two states, pass or fail. And you have to give this intelligence to your script to make it pass or fail. Right now, you have tried to give it some intelligence, but it's not really good enough, because when you run this code, will it say I am a pass or I am a fail? It will say success. That means I have executed the script. So in that sense, this script, JavaScript, is dumb. It's stupid. But we need to impart some intelligence to it. We need to give it some intelligence so that when I run it, it will say that I am a pass or I am a fail. Right? So that actually we achieve using existing frameworks, right? So we have framework called as JUnit, TestNG. You must have heard about Cucumber. They all are targeted towards achieving this in a more efficient and better way. So we will be introducing JUnit to you in the next class, right? So next time when you write this code, you're going to write this inside JUnit tests. And if you remember, if you attended my previous classes, I did try to introduce JUnit at that time, right? The same way we are going to introduce JUnit here, and in the subsequent classes you're going to do with that. You are going to use JUnits instead of public static void main. For now, it's okay. So for what is your target for till we meet again is to complete all of this first till 10, right? You can just read the code, see how it's working, and try to write it on your own. Don't try to copy and paste, but see how it's done and try to write it. That's all you have to do. Okay, so I have tried explaining till partial link text. You see CSS selector, you try to do this XPath if you can. Anyway, this I'm going to explain later. 6 and 7 you can skip if you want. Then 8, you try it. It's very simple. It's trying to fill a form. 9, again, Very simple thing here. Data, it's again doing some kind of validations, fetching some values, getting some text. It's pretty simple to understand. But if you have doubts, then you raise it. You say, Akash, I'm not getting what this is doing, right? So that you also get to ask something in the calls. Usually you guys are typically very silent in the calls, mostly because you are not doing much. The only reason people are silent because they are not trying it enough. Otherwise, there is absolutely no reason, because you will get doubts, you will get issues. And that I understand when you post on the group, right? So you all have to try it out, and you try it, then you of course will get issues and doubts. And that is what really I want. I want you to get stuck in the errors and issues so that I could solve them. If no issues, if you face no issues, there could only be two meaning about it. You always, your teachers previously also must have said this. You don't get doubts only when you either are too smart to study that topic or you are just not doing it, right? And if you're too smart to do that topic, that means you don't need these sessions. So you're kind of wasting your time. Or if you're even not doing it, then also you're kind of wasting your time. So you have to try it out, do it, then only you can make full out of these sessions, guys. Okay, so just to summarize, you have to try all of them. And this is your assignment. I'm going to put that as an assignment apart from some other assignment as well. So this is one part of your assignment. Then I'll post one more in the classroom, and then you need to do both, and you need to add all of that in. So in a Maven project, first of all, it has to be a Maven project. Second, it has to be inside a GitHub repository. Third is you have to post that GitHub repository in the classroom and submit as an assignment. And I see here, I also want to talk about this, that I see if I go to the assignments segment, maybe the marks segment, you see I see a lot of reds here. That means either you have not done it, or you have simply did not put it inside this classroom. And I think in 90% cases you have not done it. That's my understanding. And you see this line, this is just for when your session timing and are you comfortable. Only those are handed in, and most of them, maximum of them, they are missing. And I'm going to go through all of them. I'm going to give marks as well. But when I opened it, I saw so many missing entities here, and it really is disappointing, guys. So please complete this. This is not something you will miss it and then we'll leave it. We will not leave this. You have to complete all of them. Even if it is a backlog for you, you have to complete them. These are your targets. If you're sitting at home and thinking what to do, where to study, this is your starting point. Complete the assignments. Don't go and watch the videos again and all those. Just go and try to do the assignments. This is your learning curve using assignments. How many sessions you have attended, how many classes you are into, how many questions you have asked. It's not dependent on that. Your progress depends on how many assignments or how many greens you have in your list here, right? So if I see Yadnesh, you see Yadnesh is very active basically. So you see everything is handed in almost, even though he has done some sometimes a late submission, but he has done it. Even Kavita has done it, and lot of you have done it. Basically, I'm not saying everyone is in the same dimension, but people are doing it, but most of you are not doing it. At least 70% of you are not doing it. And this is not a sustainable model, guys, because the point is, maybe after, I'm just visualizing it, maybe after a month or 15 days or 20 days from today, I would hardly have 4 or 5 people. Not because I would restrict you guys to join. You will lose interest. You will lose interest because things will go so advanced. The moment we'll start Cucumber and all those things, you will stop following the concepts, right? You will just not get it. And then it will start getting boring, and then you will stop attending the classes. Do you want all that thing to happen? This is my experiences, guys. I have seen people doing, right? So please stop doing it. Submit your assignments on time, even if you're not, because right now the time, they are already in your backlogs. So whatever is missing, please complete them. They're like, you see the tags there, they're basic. I have not even started the advanced assignment. These are basic assignments, right? So I think I've said enough. whatever is missing, what you come here, you see what is missing, you complete it, submit it. And I was waiting for to give marks. So I thought, let's get everyone's assignment, then I'll give it. But I think I have to set a deadline for this, guys. I need these assignments as soon as possible. I need to exert some more pressure on you guys. This is not sustainable. It will create problems for me later. I will not be able to deliver my lectures efficiently, I or Sarang for that matter, right? Because we try to give some knowledge to you, and if you're not following it up, it's a waste of effort from our side, isn't it? Because we have to then again tell it multiple times, twice or thrice or 4 times or 5 times. And if you do these assignments, maybe if we tell you once, you will follow it immediately because you have already done assignments, you have already done some basics. All right, enough said. So any question, guys? Anything else you want to talk about? Because it's 4:30 now. All right, so I have a chat. It's, sir, my mic isn't working. Okay, Apurva, I see your mic is not working. So if you want to ask something, you can type it. I will try to answer it.